We are starting the web server Flask framework. So to be clear with the judges, this is a platform that I developed a year ago with authentication already built in. So everything you'll see is made separately from the hack. I will define the hack for you in a second. So we log in. We have an upload page and a browser page. So here you can see we have a browser page and an upload page. Here I'm going to upload 10 DICOM files as a test. DICOM files are essentially a medical data format to store CT images and medical information. Here you can see it's a CT scan of somebody's lower stomach, kind of leading up into their lungs. So here, if we can see, the hack revolves around stored data on Filecoin, which essentially is talking to web3.js in the back. But I will prove that by just using console log really quick. So here, when I press store data on Filecoin, it's calling the JavaScript through Webpack. So in the background, Webpack bundles up our JavaScript and all our modules and then puts that on the render for us. So Flask is then able to pass session ID information of the data stored on our SQLite database. So here we uploaded the data. We had async functions promise us that the CID is coming back, and the CID came back. What is not happening is we're not triggering the redirect back to the browser page. So we do that manually, and that's just simply for development. Here, I take the CID and I store it in the SQLite database. And here my CID is in the ID input. So when I click retrieve data from Filecoin, I'm able to trigger the JavaScript code to API call the data that was stored according to the CID. And to prove that this works, we can simply delete the upload. Okay, and we're going to retrieve data from Filecoin. So we sent the CID off. We got our, this is what DICOM file looks like in JSON data structure. And if we refresh the page, we have our restored data with this, with the 10. In the back end, what's happening is that we're passing an input tag with a session ID associated with our data and a class for all the buttons related to Filecoin. So in the basement down here below, we pass a bundle.js file called filecoin.js, which contains all the JavaScript for Web3 storage. So Web3 storage API allows me to pass the session ID, then through a series of asynchronous functions here in succession, we pass the data and then we wait for a CID. This CID to the backend function is a web request of Ajax throwing the CID back to the Flask app endpoint. And this endpoint right here, it waits for a response from the JavaScript. We have some validation code to see if the CID is already stored on record, and then we store the CID in our SQLite database. Here we can see that these data tables were also coded for the hack, where essentially we have ID, the data was uploaded, session ID for the data, and